Hey, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Hanging On to Hope podcast.
I'm Brenda J.
And I'm Karen Wonder.
And we are HangingOnToHope.org.
This podcast is intended as educational and is not psychological or medical advice. Always consult a professional when needed, and we disclaim any liability in connection with the instruction, information, or advice given. Hello, and welcome to the Hanging On to Hope podcast. This is Karen W. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we're welcoming back Dawn Hopkins to the podcast. Dawn was my yoga instructor when I went through yoga teacher trainings, and she's the founder and president of Inspiritus Yoga, Holistic Wellness and Training Centers, an international yoga school and continuing education provider with training centers in Phoenix, Detroit, and is that Canada?
Yes, Saskatchewan.
Wow. She's also the co-founder of the Retreat Ladies, Inspired Wellness Journeys, provider of yoga and wellness retreats with programs designed to help women heal and recover from the stress and demands of daily life. So thanks for coming back to the podcast, Dawn.
Thanks for inviting me back. I love being on here with you.
Yeah, we love it. So I listened to the 2-part podcast you did with Jan on her Hope After Breast Cancer podcast, and it was on the Am I Hungry program and retreat that's coming up that we'll talk about in a little bit. And it's based on a book and a program called Am I Hungry? And that was written by Michelle May. I think I met at that. Didn't we do the EMDR with horses? I think she was at that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, she was.
Yeah. And I know I can sometimes use food for stress relief on days I work from home. It's all too easy to get focused on, using food for comfort.
Continuing with part 2.
All that to say is that when we teach mindful eating, we're helping people really be present and focus on eating so that they get more pleasure and satisfaction out of it, and they're less likely to overeat because they are paying attention to the signals their body is sending them while they're eating, which then will help them know when to stop eating, when the body is getting full. So we use lots of different strategies, like putting the fork down. Part of the reason why we put the fork down is not just to slow us down, but it's also to recognize that if I have a bite of food in my mouth that I'm chewing and I am putting a forkful on my fork at the same time, which bite am I thinking about?
The next bite that you're going to be eating.
The next bite.
Yeah.
And the next bite. And the next bite. So you are never present or noticing the bite that is actually in your mouth. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that and removing distractions, creating a pleasurable environment, which helps our body digest food better, because we have 2 different sides to our nervous system. We have our fight or flight side of our nervous system when we're stressed and busy, right? And then we have our rest and digest nervous system, which is the side of nervous system we want to be in while we're eating and digesting food. So if we're like working while we're eating, then we are far more likely to be in the other side of our nervous system and not even digesting the food well or effectively. And we might end up with gastric upset and, excuse my language, gas and bloating and all the things, right?
Yeah.
But we have a lot of different tools and strategies that help people focus, be present, and really increase their enjoyment and satisfaction from eating and lower the chances of them overeating because they're connected to their body and paying attention while they eat.
Yeah, I didn't realize we were supposed to enjoy eating. I don't think I've ever enjoyed eating as we're talking about this.
That makes me sad for you, Brenda, because I still am a foodie.
Mm-hmm.
I love food now.
Yeah.
And I used to have a love-hate relationship with food. I don't anymore. I fully enjoy eating. That doesn't mean that there aren't times where I just have to get, some food in my body because I'm busy and I have things to do and I'm not sitting down and, creating this amazing meal or anything. But I honestly, I'm like, if I'm not going to enjoy it, I'm not going to waste my time on it. So my husband and I play with recipes and different ingredients, and we explore all kinds of different styles of food. And it really has changed my relationship with food by just, how can I enjoy this more? And now there are foods that I used to not eat because I hated them, and I actually love them now. So it can really change how you relate to food and how much you enjoy it.
Yeah, it's just because it just triggers me. I think that's the problem. Axe was so food, like I would cook and he would throw up the food I made across the room.
Yeah.
It just was so, everything revolved around food. But I do, now that I think about it, when Karen and I were in France, I did love to enjoy that meal in France.
Especially the one in Paris.
Yeah, the one in Paris.
Yeah, that was like such a good meal.
Yeah. Okay, I did enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I think in Florida, I enjoyed those meals. I really like fish for some reason in a restaurant, because when you try to cook it at home, it never tastes as good. Except when my sister cooks it. But yeah, so I think I do enjoy that actually. Yeah. Now that I think about it, really like eating that out, but everything else, not so much. And I think when I eat desserts, I love them, but I feel like bad about it because I know sugar's bad for you.
Because you're judging yourself though. Like she's saying, you're like, this is bad. I shouldn't be eating it, instead of just like enjoying it while you're eating it.
Yeah. And just having, like a small amount of it and going, that was really good, and moving on,
Yeah, that's what I just need to do, because sugar just causes a lot of inflammation in my body because of my autoimmune disease. So maybe that's why I think of it as bad too, because then I'm like, no, I'm going to suffer the consequences later because I'm allergic to a lot of foods. So.
Yeah, food sensitivities and food preferences can very much integrate into this program. For example, like I'm really sensitive to gluten, not all the time. It's really unpredictable. But, I learned that through mindful eating. And now I can choose, like, I'm like, okay, I have a choice. I can choose to eat that food anyway and just know I'm not going to feel that great. Or I can choose to, maybe I'm going to avoid that because I really want to feel good today and I don't want to feel the way I feel when I eat it. But I'm in the driver's seat. I have a choice, and I am empowered to make that choice, as opposed to the way I used to view it, which was that good food, bad food. If I eat that, I'm bad, all that thing. So that, and also, Brenda, just, you're mentioning how you have some associations. That's part of the process too, is starting to kind of tease away at that. Like the fact that you have this association around food. Well, in my family, all of our fights took place at the table growing up. And so all I wanted to do is slam that food down and get the heck away from the table.
Yeah. I know, and food associations, like you're saying.
Yeah. And so going through this process helped me see that and go, that's why I eat so fast. And going, and I wasn't enjoying the food. I was just trying to get it in to get away from the table, because we also grew up in a family where you had to clean your plate, and, you couldn't go use the car, see your friends, whatever, if you hadn't finished the meal in front of you. So it was like, okay, this is what I have to eat. I'm going to eat all of it as quickly as possible to get out of this environment, because I know there's going to be conflict any minute, and then I had to undo that. So
I was the youngest of 5. So I had 3 older brothers and older sisters. So I basically had to eat peas and beans, like things that nobody else wanted to eat, because I wasn't going to grab something over them. So maybe that's why I don't care about food so much, because we'd have steak and I'd get like a bite of steak. Like, and I see people eat a whole steak and I'm like, wow, how you eat that much meat? So, and then I think when I did get a lot of food, it wasn't anything healthy at all. Like, so I had to learn how to eat healthier, I think, as I got older. So,
yeah, I think there's a lot of foods. I have a memory of my mom was gone and my dad gave me like some kind of TV dinner, and it was like turkey with dressing. And I always hated that kind of dressing. So my dad had the clean plate club. He wanted me to eat everything. And so I hid the stuffing in my napkin and he thanked me for it.
We had dogs, so they always got the food. We would just shove it under the table.
That's funny how much food is.
I know, so funny, right?
Yeah, I mean,
funny and not funny. Truthfully, like honestly, it's funny and not funny. And I think I think we have to kind of approach it with that attitude, because it can get really heavy too. If we're not careful, we can really start to allow this to be a place of like overthinking and getting too stressed about it. And this is about freedom and flexibility and grace,
Yeah. I think I'm in a fairly good place now. Like I only, when I'm hungry, I wait till I feel like I'm hungry. I try to eat really healthy because I have a lot of sensitivities. And so, like you said, sometimes I'm like, I could eat this, but I'm probably gonna not feel good. And that's okay. Sometimes I do. And then sometimes I make the choice not to. And like right now I'm in a place where like I knew I needed to stop eating the foods that I was allergic to for a little while, but I'm doing pretty good right now. So yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, girl, I'm from Chicago. So, I mean, I got to have some good pizza now and then.
Yeah.
And I will eat gluten-free pizza. It's fine, but it's not Chicago pizza. And every once in a while, just got to do it. And I just know, like, I will plan for it.
I'm from Pittsburgh. Like, there is good pizza back there too.
Oh, yeah. A lot of places have the cauliflower crust, which some of them are pretty good.
No, there are many gluten-free pizzas that I absolutely love, but every once in a while, I gotta have it. And so
me too. I do it sometimes. And then I think as long as it's not like Costco or Sam's Club pizza, that always every time will make me sick. Or like Caesar, like something like that. But if it's a good pizza from a good shop, I'm usually okay.
Like a good wood-fired pizza.
Or in Italy. In Italy,
in
Italy, you're fine.
Yeah. My daughter's in Japan right now, and that's what she was saying last night. She goes, Mom, she's allergic to everything. She can barely eat food here. And she goes, I'm able to eat anything here because the food quality is so much better. And I'm like, great. So she's so happy right now.
Yeah, it is totally different elsewhere. And I do not have the digestive issues elsewhere that I have here. So I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully they're going to make better choices of our.
Yeah. You should see the picture of the meal we ate in Paris. I ate it all and didn't feel sick at all.
Yeah.
I had this dessert that was so big. I ate the whole thing.
See, look, you can enjoy food, Brenda. I love that.
I did enjoy that. Maybe it is associated with thinking I might feel sick after, and that's why I don't enjoy it. Like, and so when I know what's not going to make me sick is like chicken and some vegetable, nothing that's real exciting, but I know I'm going to feel good. So maybe that's why I don't get that excited about food, but I was excited in Paris. So, and then as a little kid, I got the peas and the scraps that were left that nobody wanted. So how do you get excited about that? Like
canned mushy vegetables, yummy.
Pork and beans, yeah. Like it's hard to get. So maybe that's the association. But yeah, makes me excited now that I think about it. So the next question is how much? You described the hunger scale, which I think would be really helpful for you to go over.
Okay, cool. So remember I talked about the balloon idea, and our stomach, like a balloon, stretches, right? We know that feeling. So we use a hunger scale to help people know how hungry they are or how full they are, but also it helps inform us of when to start eating and when to stop eating. So on the hunger scale, a 1 is where the balloon is completely empty. So imagine a balloon with no air in it. I'm going to kind of jump a little bit. So take a big puff of air, just fill the balloon. Okay. That's a 5 on the hunger scale. And that is just, we're not hungry. We're not full. We're just satisfied. Blow all the way in until that balloon is super, super stretched. Now we're at a 10 where we feel like we could pop. So we have all these nuances within that spectrum. So a 1, when the balloon is completely empty, that's when we are most likely to overeat because we are so hungry that we are grabbing for whatever is available as quickly as possible. And we don't even care what it is. Have you ever been that hungry?
Yes.
Yes. We've
Yesterday.
all been there. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't even care.
Walmart.
I just got to get something in my belly.
Yeah.
So a 2 is the ideal time to start eating because we're not quite at that 1 where we've lost our wits, but we're at a point where we are hungry and eating would be enjoyable. And then a 3 is where, it's also a good time to eat, but it's also a good time to like prepare a meal because by the time we get that meal prepared, we'll probably be around a 2.
Mhm.
So somewhere between a 2 and a 3 is a great time to eat. When we are at a 4, it's where we're just starting to notice the signs and symptoms of hunger. A 5, in that middle place, is where we're not hungry, we're not full, we're completely satisfied and content. That's a great time to stop. A 6 is where we are just starting to feel the presence of food in the stomach, but we're not uncomfortable. So somewhere between a 5 and a 6 is a great time. Either of those places is a great time to stop. Then we move into 7 is where we're starting to feel a little uncomfortable or a little distended. An 8 is where we're starting to feel very uncomfortable. A 9 is where we feel maybe sick or bloated and we just need to lay down. And a 10 is where we literally feel like we could just pop.
Like Thanksgiving.
So,
Yeah.
right. So a 5 is like, we have to kind of redefine what fullness is. And I think a lot of times it's like, oh, I'm full. That means I have to feel the food in my stomach or I have to feel uncomfortable. That's not ideal because now we've overeaten and now we feel sluggish or we feel distended or we feel uncomfortable and maybe even sleepy and tired, right? So ideally, we're starting around a 2 or a 3 and we're stopping around a 5 or a 6. Guess how much food that is?
It's like you said, like a fistful.
It's about a fistful. Unless you're eating something that's a little bit less dense, like a salad or something, that's lighter. And then maybe you're talking about, 2 handfuls. But in general, we are kind of conditioned to overeat. And wherever we go out to eat or whenever we go out to eat, typically they're serving us anywhere from 2 to 3 portions.
Yeah. They give us huge
So,
portions.
And oftentimes we translate at home where we may serve more than just one portion of food. Yeah. So we use that hunger scale to check in to determine when to eat, but then also while we're eating, we stop and check back in again to decide how much more food we think we need to be comfortable and satisfied and content at the end of the meal. But not just how much, it's not just about volume, which we talked about earlier, Brenda. It's also about what we eat, right? So we could stuff our stomach and be full, but not feel satisfied. So what else do we need to feel satisfied by the end of the meal? And that could be nutritional needs, but it also could just be, maybe I want a little taste of chocolate and then I'll feel satisfied. So we consider all of those things as part of mindful eating.
Yeah, I thought that was really helpful because I know sometimes when especially on Saturdays, because I have my coffee and then I don't eat. If I run errands or whatever, I'm starving. If you get to the 1, then I think I do. Then I end up eating more because I'm so hungry. I'm eating faster. And so it's made me think about that more since you went over that scale.
I got lucky yesterday because I was at Walmart for the nonprofit trying to do stuff. And I got really hungry because it was like around 4 and I hadn't eaten much. And I was at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm lightheaded. Like all the things you said. And thank goodness right next to me, there were these rotisserie chickens. So I didn't have to take the time to cook, but it was still healthy, but it was enough just to have a little bit of it and satisfy me till I got to the point where I could get some, make a decent meal. But I was like, oh, cause I'm trying to eat healthy now. I didn't want to go get some junk. So yeah, I shouldn't have let myself get to that point, but I was busy all day.
Yeah. Sometimes.
Yeah. We didn't do that. Yeah. Karen
and
did
it
that.
happens.
She did
it happens
that.
to all of us.
She was starving and then she went shopping at what store was it? And she forgot her debit card, but she was starving. And
At Winco.
She was trying to be nice to me on the phone, but she was starving.
I went to Winco and I didn't have my debit card. I don't know if you go to Winco, but Winco doesn't take credit cards.
She's like, I'm so hungry.
I was so hungry. I was definitely at a 1.
That's where you want to ask the person in line, hey, would you mind just spotting me a little bit of money so I can buy some food?
It was too much. I had to drive all the way home, get my debit card, and I just got a new one. So I had to find it and activate it and drive back to the stores. I had to hold my groceries.
And I had to let her go. I'm like, I'll let you go because I can tell. She's like, I can't. I was on a time to you right now.
I know. I was really hungry.
That was funny. We all get like that, though. We just don't tell anyone.
I
Yeah.
love it. Hey, we've all been there. We have.
So then the last question you were having and on that little diagram was the where do we invest our energy? And I love that one too, about how you stress the point. Am I utilizing the fuel I get from the food I'm eating? Is what I'm eating nourishing to me and helping me to have energy, or do I feel drained or bloated after I eat? That's another thing to think about. And then you say they were all born as instinctive eaters. This is how babies and toddlers naturally eat. And I remember my kids, they would just eat enough and then they don't want any more. But many factors start skewing that as we get older, like we're talking about the Clean Plate Club and other things. Anything you want to add to that?
Sure. And this is it's so fun because I have a 3-year-old grandson who is the epitome of a mindful eater. And when you think about a toddler, why they eat in the first place, it's because they're hungry. They just have this instinctive knowing of when they're hungry, and they will communicate with us in whatever way is available to them to let us know when they're hungry, right? But they will not eat foods they don't want to eat. Like if you try to force feed them food, it's coming out back at you. It's going to the dog. It's going to be on the floor, whatever. And then they eat in a way that is really mindful. Like they play with their food. They interact with it. I'm not encouraging us grown adults to go out and play with our food, but
Yeah.
hey, if it floats your boat, go for it. But they really are mindful. They're present. They're interacting with the food and they're enjoying it, whether they're making sounds with it or painting with it or playing with it, whatever the case may be. But then they know also instinctively when they're full. And so when we try to, hey, take another bite. Oh, no, another bite. Oh, no, another bite. We are now forcing them to eat when they don't want any more food and their body is telling them they're full. So this is where things can start to get skewed, right? And then, obviously where they invest their energy, well, they're exploring their environment. They're busy. They're toddling all over the place. I'm exhausted when he comes to our house because I'm following him around like, don't touch that. Don't grab that. Oh no, bah, running after him. But all that to say, when we start to force our children to eat when they're not hungry, when we force them to continue eating, or we say, if you eat that, I will reward you with dessert. Now we're encouraging overeating, right?
Yeah.
When we use food as a reward, okay, great job. Here's a lollipop or here's some ice cream. When we use it for comfort, oh, you fell down and skinned your knee. Come inside. Let's go get some candy. Oh, you got a shot at the doctor's office. Here's a lollipop. Okay.
Yeah.
You start to see how over time we start to make these associations that food is comfort, or food is love, or food is reward, instead of recognizing that, food is just part of what nourishes our body and fuels our body to be able to live the life that we live. And hopefully we're living lives that are incorporating movement and activity and joy in our lives. So it often begins with well-meaning parents, who just didn't know what they didn't know. And also parents, especially moms, modeling dieting or modeling overeating or modeling yo-yo dieting, where they're going, vacillating between these extremes of overeating and dieting. That stuff has the biggest impact on whether or not somebody will develop an eating disorder. And I am one of those people. My mother was on and off of diets my whole life. She hid food. She had all kinds of guilt and shame around food. She would be, one minute we'd be only eating low fat food, sugar-free food, whatever. And then the next minute she's like busting out, the more enjoyable foods. I should.
Yeah.
But, it was like I watched and observed her weighing herself constantly, trying on 14 different outfits before we went anywhere, calling herself fat, all of these things. They imprint on our kids' psyches. And the way we interact with food or the way we teach them to interact food impacts things as well. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, that did. Another thing you were doing when you were talking about the mindful eating was, I like how you talked about one of the things you mentioned was being grateful and even thinking about everything that had to take place to have that meal, like the farmer, we don't stop and think about all of that. And I'm like, that's a great thing to stop and even think about, not just thank you for this food, but think about all the different aspects of people that were involved in bringing us our food. We don't think about that enough. Because I'm really gratitude. And I thought that really changes, that just starts your meal in a better place.
Yeah. Well, studies show that practicing gratitude improves our health, our relationships, our sleep, our mood, everything. And so we really talk about, the experience of gratitude around food and how that can also shift our relationship with food, and understanding, all the many hands and all the things that were involved in getting the food to us in the form that it's in, when we eat, and expressing gratitude for that and realizing how connected we then are to all the people that were involved in getting us the food in the form that it is that we're eating.
Yeah, I love that.
I never thought about that before. Well, a little bit, like maybe sometimes the meat or whatever, but not the crops and
really taking it all the way, the way through.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah, and the Clean Plate Club, like my mom was never on a diet. They didn't diet, and everyone in my family was fairly just healthy, and they were contractors. They built homes, so they were all extremely active. And I had 3 brothers, so I never had to really deal with the dieting. Like I wasn't a big dieter until I got into high school and was modeling and stuff, and they made me feel like I had to. But that my mom does have that clean plate thing, like she has to eat every scrap on her plate. And I think I used to be like that, but I'm not anymore. So but she's still.
Yeah, my mom's weight fluctuated. I know she was in Weight Watchers, so she would be heavy and, go back and forth like you were saying.
So I love how you say we need to focus on the inside out, not outside in. Please expound on that for us.
Sure. So the fact of the matter is we are our own best expert, right? And we have to give ourselves permission to listen to our bodies rather than letting somebody from the outside determine when to eat, what to eat, how much to eat. It really needs to come from us. And so when we incorporate mindfulness and mindful eating strategies, it's really that inside out approach where we are really dialed into our body, knowing when our body is hungry, knowing what hunger feels like in our bodies, knowing what our body wants and needs, knowing when to stop eating because we're listening to our body communicate back to us when it's full, but also communicate back with us how the food feels in our bodies, because not all food feels the same. And that's part of how we learn about food sensitivities or learn about how certain foods might make us feel better than other foods. And that's unique to each of us. So rather than letting some other expert tell us what to do from the outside in, it's about undoing that and empowering ourselves and recognizing we are our own best expert.
Yeah, I also notice a lot, even as adults, that other people try to get you to eat. And for me, if I'm not hungry, I can't. I just don't want to eat if I'm not hungry. I've always kind of been like that. But if I'm hungry, I eat. And I did notice a lot of adults try to pressure that, at least for me. But I don't know. I don't know if anyone else has experienced that at all.
I certainly did. My grandmother was the greatest food pusher that ever lived. So we call them food pushers.
Yeah, almost make you feel offended.
Food pushers. Okay.
They almost make you feel offended. Like, why? You're not going to eat that?
What do you mean? Don't you love me? Yeah.
I know, it's associated with it. And I love the visual you gave of the speed bump. Like when you're talking about when you go to a restaurant and you get this probably 2 to 3 portion big plate. And so I liked when you talked about the speed bump when eating out and we have these big portions. Did you want to expound on that?
Yeah, well, like I said earlier, we may get 2 to 3 portions when we're in a restaurant. So one of the strategies we talk about is
to be continued. Stay tuned for next week's part 3. You don't want to miss it.
Thanks for tuning in to Hanging On to Hope. Check out our website, hangingontohope.org. There are resources on there, and if you would like to donate or volunteer, you can do that through our website. We are a brand new nonprofit, so we appreciate any and all support. And we thank you for listening. And until next time, keep hanging on to hope. We are evidence that there is hope and healing for you, and our passion is to help you find it too. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening, everyone.